Hey, what's up? Welcome back, friends. In today's video, we're gonna talk about why you keep having to declutter your beauty products. Why is it such a struggle? It feels like a never-ending cycle, and we're gonna talk about how to break that today. I think something that we're all really feeling like we're lacking these days is time. One of the biggest concerns that you guys expressed to me was how to find the time to declutter. And one of the ways that you can find the time to declutter at the end of the day is reducing the rate that you overconsume products that you will inevitably never use. Let's get inspired to align our buying habits with our usage habits so that we're only using our time to use the products that we love and also not wasting time organizing, decluttering, and purchasing and window shopping for things we really don't essentially need. What really helped me was starting a low buy to no buy and also starting to track my empties from about 2020 to mid 2024. And I also was a lot more active at Project Pan and Shop My Stash, etc. And through doing that, I learned how many cleansers I finish up in the year, how many moisturizers, how many body moisturizers, how many products do I actually use up? Let's talk about usage here a little bit. So in general, let's take the example of shampoo and conditioner. I use about 6 shampoos a year and 5 conditioners. Why? Because with shampoo, I tend to double cleanse and I have long hair, but I do concentrate it only at the scalp, even at that. And with conditioner, well, I only condition once. And sometimes I like to repurpose my conditioner as shaving cream. Even at that, I still use more shampoo than conditioner. I would even argue that most people use more shampoo than conditioner, depending on their hair type. So there's definitely a discrepancy between what's marketed and sold to us versus what you actually need and use. Another thing that's working against us a bit is the psychology of shopping. Shopping, as you know, triggers dopamine, a hormone that affects many aspects of your body. It gives you a sense of motivation and pleasure, which inevitably can make you enjoy repeating certain behaviors and can actually create addictions. Overconsumption creates a short-term reward that doesn't bring long-term benefit. And collecting products replaces mindful consumption with impulsive purchases. For example, let's say you're someone who really enjoys collecting lipsticks or eyeshadow palettes like in the 2010s, blushes. But in reality, have you ever looked at how many of those you finish to completion? And chances are you probably don't, because if you have that many, you maybe rotate them. Mind you, you may have like 4 or 5 favorites that are pretty worn in, but for the most part, you're probably not inclined to finish a product to completion when you are spoiled for choice. And then when you get bored of those and there's a new release, you might be interested in replenishing your collection with some more goodies. Sure, you can declutter to offset that overpurchasing, but that is when it becomes an endless cycle. A collection implies that you're keeping these things to look at all the time for keepsakes and not actually using to completion or going in with the objective of dwindling down what you actually own. There's a fine line between it being a hobby and it just being counterproductive to your well-being. Like, it's normal to enjoy collecting things. I am still a culprit of collecting things. I know that I am of that mindset and I really enjoy it, but a hobby sometimes can become so overwhelming when you have to purchase more storage, keeping that collection organized and keeping it usable, because if it's all shoved in drawers or shoved in boxes, it's a bit more of a dumpster bin of a makeup drawer than it is actually a collection. What is the point of throwing things out that you like? Why would you want to declutter things that you like? Why buy them in the first place? then you don't even have to make the decision later. So one tip I have is to keep a log of your usage. It may seem so tedious and ridiculous at first. I used to track my usages when I would do Project Pan. I participated in something called Pan Those Eyeshadows. There's also a Pan That Palette challenge, for instance, where you use a palette for a determined period of time, whatever you choose, and you essentially try to see if you can hit pan on those eyeshadows or finish them to completion. That's what some people here on YouTube do. I quickly realized that I'm not very successful at that. So I did go into Pan Those Eyeshadows, which was a roulette style where you set an objective or a usage objective for example, 5 eyeshadows, and I selected them at random. I turned it into a game. If you gamify usage tracking, if you're the type of person who likes challenges, you might find that really helpful, because in realizing how long it took me to even hit pan on certain eyeshadows, whether that be 30 uses, 45 uses, or how long it took me to finish up a concealer or a foundation based off of the way that I would use the product, it was such an eye-opener as to how much of my makeup collection I didn't need. There's no way I could have finished and gone through everything that I ultimately ended up throwing out, which you can see in my makeup declutters. So I invite you to watch those videos if you're looking for motivation, and a lot of my project pans are in playlists on this channel. Rather than decluttering and purchasing and decluttering and cycling through that, you can just shop your stash, stop accumulating, but declutter bit by bit over time. And it's so much less painful. Honestly, I still experience guilt, but it has really killed my craving to shop completely, because I can see that I've saved so much money and I don't spend time looking at reviews, trying to compare products, which ultimately, if a concealer conceals, it has served its purpose. Why do I need to go and find the biggest and baddest and best concealer, And for a while, it made sense because it was the objective of my channel. But if that's not really the objective of something greater that you're working on and you're just collecting, you might want to reevaluate why. Where does this impulse inclination come from, right? Because a lot of times we're shopping to fill voids, or we use these hobbies and habits to avoid real feelings that are locked up inside that we just haven't unpacked. So keep a log of the products that you use, and I used Google Sheets. It's free. And at the end of the year, because what I would do is I would set up columns. I also have a video on how I set up my Excel for Project Pan or for calculating my empties. And I learned a lot about my usage patterns. I no longer spend the time doing that. It's sort of like, think of it like calorie counting when you first embark on a diet and start to understand how much you're actually consuming when you've gained weight and not realized where that weight came from. A lot of times people just do it at the beginning of their journey, and once they become familiar with quantities, they no longer see the purpose of doing that because it's already ingrained. So if you do this and you pause before buying things, actually give yourself 24 to 48 hours before you're fulfilling your Sephora order or what have you, you can evaluate whether you're truly replenishing something you used up or just collecting more clutter, which you will ultimately have to deal with at a later date. When I'm buying something, am I buying another problem? Am I buying something that I'm just going to have to deal with sooner rather than later? Is it just going to be something I'm going to end up throwing out in 2 years and feeling guilty about? I try to make my approach to decluttering as mindful as possible. So The way that I do that is because, remember, you want it to be pleasurable. You want dopamine associated to the good activity and not the overbuying and the overshopping and the overconsumption. We need to rewire our brains here. Rather than going in right away and picking out things that I need to throw out, or telling myself, I gotta get rid of 50% of this or 80% of this has to be gone through this declutter session. Doesn't that sound aggressive, abrasive? Don't you feel resistance towards those kind of tasks? So instead, I'll pick away at things that I know that I want to keep and that I'm interested in using up. I'll take those things out and separate them. So focus on what you love to use and what you'd love to keep, because that is going to make things so much easier. It'll also reduce overwhelm. One thing that I do to reduce overwhelm is I keep my daily drivers in a little clear bin, and that's what I use every day to get ready. And I switch this out. Some people call this shop my stash, so to speak, especially if you're switching things out, going through your collection. I keep the majority of the products that I own separated from my everyday products, focus on the everyday products. And when I feel like there's something lacking or there's something that I need to replace because it's non-seasonal or it's almost done, like this lip gloss is on its last days, and I don't think I'm gonna remove the stopper to scrape out every little nook and cranny, because to be honest, I have a lot of lip gloss. So I'm not worried about it. Anything that looks immediately like you should throw it out because it's too old or it's used up. One thing that I like to look for is, for example, which this is one thing, like as soon as this compact breaks, because it's already cracked on one hinge, if it cracks completely and I find it unpleasurable to use up the product. I know some people would be like, oh, well, like you can repress it into another compact that of a product that you've used up, blah, 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 blah. If you are in your excess era, you don't need to do that. If you're not the type of person who enjoys panning to completion and you're just irritated with the packaging of the product, just get rid of it. I give you permission, release that guilt, and just let it go. So I mean, this is fine right now, but if it ever breaks more, because I can't stand, for example, like old NARS packaging, the sticky packaging, like tactilely is so irritating to me that it removes the pleasurable experience of using the product. I actually enjoy using makeup, and I don't want things to make it displeasurable, you know? Does that make any sense? I know I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, but I'm trying to just be elaborative so that you can find creative ways to use up your products within reason. So definitely keep items that you are planning to use up visible and accessible to you, because you will find that it makes finishing up products much easier, and also makes decluttering products easier, because you might try this on a Thursday and it's fine, and then you realize you don't reach for it in a month, or the next time you reach for it, the consistency is off. You chuck it, you go into your stash and replace it with something else and work on it one at a time. It really reduces overwhelm. Another habit that I adopted as well is to keep those things where you have a tendency of using them. I have a tendency of doing my makeup right here because it's in front of a window. Or for instance, if I'm trying to use up a body lotion, I'm gonna keep that one body lotion that I wanna use up in the bathroom so that it's ready for me to use when I hop out of the shower, which is the best time to use body lotion or moisturizer, because your pores are already open from your shower, and it also helps trap moisture into your skin. It's a good thing. So that is where I keep my moisturizer, right? I keep things where I apply them. Same with perfume. You know, you wouldn't keep your toothbrush and your toothpaste in the living room because that's not where you use them, right? If there's anything you're absolutely not sure or certain about decluttering, You can always revisit it later. I really recommend keeping a maybe box for certain items, or like a maybe drawer even. It can be really easy to go through like a super purge session where you chuck everything out without thinking about it because you're just fed up and overwhelmed. Having the maybe box and revisiting it every once in a while helps me release attachment to throwing things out, because I look at it and once revisited, I'm like, well, I haven't used it since the last time I looked at it, or I'll use it right then and there and realize I didn't really like this that much and I don't need it. I also like to adopt a habit of decluttering when I'm not decluttering. So essentially what I mean is I like to graze, sort of like a cow munches on grass in a field. They don't eat everything all in one sitting. You're decluttering as you go. So immediately, if I see something that doesn't work, like I said, I try it on. Oh, it feels like it's off, or I don't like the way this looks on me. Chuck it right then and there. Don't give yourself the opportunity to have to revisit it if you're certain you won't use it again. The maybe box is for when you're not sure. But when you do have that gut feeling, like I don't really like that eyeliner anymore, chuck it now. And before you know it, if you've been doing that for a while, these things accumulate. I mean, James Clear talks about it in Atomic Habits. He talks about that 1% rule, and it does have a compounding effect on your ability to declutter when you make less a fuss of it, and it sort of just becomes one of your habits, one of your common behaviors. Let's recap, because I know I did a lot of yada yada. Track your consumption habits, track what you're purchasing, because sometimes you're buying heaps of lipstick, heaps of blushes, or whatever product it is that you have an inclination to buying that you are maybe not even using that often. Let's be honest. Adopt decluttering into your everyday life in a casual fashion by observing what you actually use and what you truly need. Shift from collecting to curating, because the more you curate your life, the more you can autopilot giving yourself time back in life. That has been one of the biggest eye-openers to me. There have been a lot of limitations I've experienced from living in a cluttered home, from feeling ashamed of having people over, or feeling overwhelmed and stressed at home and like I don't want to be home and I'm looking for dopamine. I go and buy stuff elsewhere. There are a lot of advantages to minimizing what you consume on a personal level, not even just economically or environmentally, but really on a personal, psychological level. We are not meant to live the way that we live. Let's play a game. If you made it this far in the video, leave a comment down below. Let me know the thing that you have impulse purchasing issues with. Is it makeup? Is it clothing? Is it kitchen utensils? I don't know. Different strokes for different folks, my love. And I will see you in my next video. Bye.